Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. This is Llorraine Neithardt. I am a psychic in New York City, and Venus Unplugged is your virtual heartbreak hotel. So what we do here is we explore all the different aspects of Venus, both as an archetype, as a principle of Eros in the heavens, as psyche. And what we're looking at now is the teaching tale, as all fairy tales are teaching tales, of Snow White, which is also very alchemical for those of you that like that language. So today is about the dark stepmother. I left you hanging last week with that last week the Queen Mother. Her wish comes true, and she wishes for a girl, and the girl is born just as her mother wanted. But Snow White's birth is the Queen's death. And Snow White is born and abandoned for 1 year, a motherless child. And so I can only imagine what that soul went through, or any of us go through in those even moments of motherless child, let alone childhood of motherless children. And one can have a physical mother and still be motherless. But in fairy tales, we are talking about the great mother, not the personal mother, although there can be shades of hot pink in all of this, okay? So we talked about what is that like to be the motherless child, what those feelings can be, what the results can be. But it also, when a child is motherless, they belong to the great mother. So we know on another level they're marked, in a sense, as the holy ones, because they're going to get an opportunity to grow. All right. So a synchronicity, which I saw in this image on Facebook, and my heart stopped when I saw it. Okay, so you can go to my Facebook, LorraineNeithardt.com. And it was a photograph of an Iraq girl in an orphanage, a little girl, she's like 3 or 4, raggle-taggle clothing, and just you could feel her abandonment, okay? And who was missing her mother. So she drew her mother, and what she did was she drew this huge shape of her mother in chalk on the concrete sidewalk, and then fell asleep inside of her. Now, at first, your heart stops. It's heart-wrenching. But then when I moved into the image, I felt it not from the heartbroken, but I was in awe. I was astounded at this profound image of the motherless child, but that she's also given something, this great imagination. And it's like literal. I'm looking at this today, okay? So it was exactly how the motherless child feels in all of us. But this orphan child used her imagination, or was guided through her imagination by the Great Mother, to draw an image that would heal her wounded heart, at least for a moment. And she fell asleep in the heart as if she created a magic talisman of protection. And the loving power of the Great Mother made it real. Now that's real magic. So for those of you that like to experiment and discover things, draw a picture of the beloved feminine, whatever that might be to you, and get inside of it. See how you feel. A living talisman. So, in our fairy tale of Snow White, the little daughter is born, which represents a new feminine aspect for the soul. Something transpires in the daughter. And as we move on in the course of this fairy tale, it will show the conflict between the daughter and the mother, that is which represents the old principle restricting consciousness and a new vital impulse. The fairy tale states that the new impulse is more beautiful, that the daughter goes further and stands closer to wholeness than does the mother. You see, in another version of Snow White, the mother herself is the evil one, destroying the daughter. Now, of course, we all have, both male and female, a witch within and a daughter within, several daughters sometimes. So these refer to inner states of consciousness and also external states of consciousness. And that's the genius of fairy tale. They carry the psyche along. They carry the unconscious along. It's like a coding where we are being told the story, but we're also being given very sound advice how to approach, what to look at, because it makes looking at the shadow, well, looking at the shadow is never easy, but it's there, and that's what the work is. All right. So we have this child called Snow White, and last week we talked about the dangers of too much innocence, and she's alone for a year. See, so the queen, who is now dead, all right, the old has to die to the new. So the collective or the customary or the conventional form of life, kingdoms, family life, love, whatever you want to look at it, friendship, is experienced as complete and right. This is the way we do it in this family, and this is who we are, and this is what our religion says, and this is what women do, and this is what girls do, and all that. This is how it's done, and you just step in line, young lady. But the new experience, its impulse, is experienced as threatening and destructive. Now, don't we all know that one? You just have an inspiration or a fantasy, and you speak it. Usually, people's first response is, well, how are you going to do that? Or, oh, that's never been done before, and what do you expect? And, they tell you about the past. And all you were doing was just having a moment of inspiration. So when that happens, you just say, okay, that represents the old form. And that's not necessarily true for your inspiration. But the new is going to have a struggle in anything. So when we look at this, what's been happening, which is what we look for, both in dreams and what we look for in alchemy and what we look for in fairy tales, here again are the opposites. So the opposites are what builds the tension and between the opposites, and that in some way is the prima materia. That is the tension, the forces, the currents we need to make changes, okay? So we've already got death and life. We've got the old and the new. We've got, blood and snow. We have, mother-daughter, death mother, life mother. So we need moral courage to face the new that is trying to live. And I think that's why the old saying, if you can't tell a wise person, don't tell anybody, because it will get destroyed. It's tender and it's beautiful and it's awkward, and you don't know how it's going to manifest. But if you tend to it, lovingly, gently, and very often in secret. We contain it. We don't let anything get to it. You'd be surprised how Psyche's going to help you. But we need moral courage to face it. And the moral courage isn't willfulness and spite. It's like this idea or this creative action or this change that I want in myself. I need to have the moral courage to love myself enough to let the little abandoned child or the Snow White within grow into maturity, into power. Okay? And so we need to look at, how much time do we long to give birth to something? No, but the old way drags us back. Every New Year's, okay? We start with our resolutions, and by next December, very few people even remember what they are. So how many times have you wanted to explore something new or do something new, and the first thing someone will say, or your inner witch mother will say, or your inner stepmother will say, okay, but what will people think, or what will people say? I remember being asked that when I was a kid. Just look at, I was astonished. Who cares what people will say? And why would they be saying something about me? They should be saying something about themselves. I never, thank goodness, I think it was a natural protection where I just didn't take it in because it seemed so nutty. It would be like listening to an echo. But that was me. Okay. So do the birth, like with as I said before, with the birth of our New Year's resolutions. So that's a birth. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Okay. Something new wants to be born in us. But it doesn't make it to December. Usually not. So right there, just in a very simple, everyday way, those new ideas need to be nurtured and cared for, and even your inner Snow White, the banded one who doesn't really know too much about life, is trying to live, and she has to rely on invisible forces. And when a child is born with this kind of fate, so to speak, there are protective forces that they can tune into. But Snow White also represents like the waters of life or the coldness of death. So again, we have these opposites flowing. And that's the both maddening and delightful part of Jungian work and alchemy is it's never stagnant. These energies and forces move, and these meanings change and shift. And so you could work on a dream or a fairy tale for a year, just mining the genius and the insight that's in it. But the heroine, or this Snow White, is endowed at birth with the prima materia needed for her own transformation. So what is prima materia? For a number of years, I studied alchemy with this brilliant Jungian Nathan Schwartz-Salant. And the language of alchemy is quite complex, and the text filled with trickery. And those ancient alchemists, they were total rascals. And some of them just didn't know what they were doing. But there was it was mind-boggling because it's not linear. Right? But for me, the only thing I've got going for me, or one of the most important things that I've got going for me, is that I know Psyche knows all. That I do know. So, by day, my mind would be confused and baffled by these ancient texts of alchemy and also fairy tales. But by night, Psyche would take pity on me and give me a dream that helped me unravel such alchemical mysteries. The price I had to pay for this was absolute devotion to the way of Psyche. Nothing less would do. So that's a little hint. If you really want to understand these things, you know, Psyche is real. You know, she's within us, okay, but we also are within her. It's the soul. It's living. And it knows all. Past, present, and future. So one clue came to me in a dream, right? And so I have this dream, and in the dream I was up in Harlem, and the unspoken sounds and scenes of the streets were very vibrant. And I noticed a huge archetypal size black woman sitting on the curb. And she's swaying back and forth like a metronome. She was gently rapping while she was playing jacks. So I'm mesmerized with this. So I sit next to her left side, so I could feel her heart. And I begin to sway as she was teaching me. Non-verbally, I was just observing. And then she turned to me and she said to me, "Child, are you picking up what I'm putting down?" I was like, holy moly. I was paralyzed with terrifying awe. And I couldn't dare to speak. I couldn't. It's like, damn. But suddenly, two girls were swinging double ropes. So I jumped in, and for those that you know have the art of jump and rope, double Dutch. When there's two ropes and you jump in between them, okay? And when I was a kid, I was the queen of double Dutch on that block in the Bronx. No one could touch my triple Gemini agility and my speed and my rhythm. So the dark mother figure, she laughed out loud. She shook her head up and down like, "Okay, girl, you got it. You got it." So this dream goes on for another page or two, as my dreams do. But when I woke, as I was writing down my dream, I realized the teaching. Oh, it has something to do with rhythm. So I took the hint. And later in the day, as I was studying the alchemical text, I began to gently sway, left to right, just as I was shown, okay? And just as the great Black Mother taught, which provided me with a rhythm to feel my way into the text. And this particular fairy tale has some serious alchemy in it. And the more I'm looking at it, and the more I'm revisiting it, and of course what my dreams are revealing, all that kind of stuff, it's fascinating. Because alchemy is what is used. I mean, it's one of the foundations of certainly Jung's greatest work, but it's also a way of individuation. Okay, but I digressed. So back to the story. So we realize that the king was not concerned about his daughter, and there's no mention of him mourning his wife. So after a year, the king took another wife. So how's that for holy deadlock? She was a beautiful woman, but proud and arrogant, and she could not stand to let anyone exceed her in beauty. And she has a mirror. Ice, what a mirror. Remember who else had a mirror in fairy tales and mythology? Narcissus. Looking at himself in the waters, because he drops dead there, but from pining, okay. So we start to realize, like, no, this can't be good. She meets her stepmother. She's abandoned for a year. This, kind of evil, dark queen comes in with a mirror, okay? And so we kind of know she's the false bride. This is, it thickens the plot, but it's terrifying. Then we look at, it's like, what one of us have not been emotionally, kind of sued by our parents, okay, or family ones, or loved ones, or have sued others when we're expected the gratitude for somebody loving us or helping us or doing whatever, which seems justified. And then we're emotionally sued in many ways. But look what I did for you. Or didn't do for you. And so these inner voices, and we have these inner voices that we could also have in outer threats. So this story, this part of Snow White, so she comes in, and we get a sense of what is about to happen. We get a sense of the archetypal energy of this dark mother. Now, with the Snow White woman, okay, through the divine feminine, mercy and grace. The dark mother has a very strange way of having mercy and grace. The Snow White woman she learns to endure depression because that is the only force that will help her to be able to separate from the mother. And it moves a person from one stage to another. So that's the darkening. And the depression is kind of like a divine encounter. And as I said before, the motherless child always belongs to the great mother. So when we start looking at fairy tales aren't necessarily chronological, all right, in our lives. We could be going through different stages. Sometimes we could be going through all 7 stages at once. But the fairy tales indicate how this works. So the birth mother dies, the queen. The dark mother enters. And then we know, this is going to be some serious teachings. She moves from the white stage in alchemy to the dark stage, the Negredo. See, the prima materia, like in all things in alchemy, nothing is kind of concrete. There's like 87 different possibilities for what the prima materia is. But the prima materia, in a sense, is almost like a metaphysical substance. It's an energy field. And without the prima materia, there will be no alchemical transformation. And one must experience, we're always experiencing the Negredo, the shadow, but we need to be able to take it up consciously, which takes a lot of courage, man. You need to be able to look at it without blame to see what it is, because when we start to work with that substance, the disowned part of ourselves, or the shadow, as I said, the shadow is not necessarily negative, it's just a disowned part. Or it can be, like I said before, the part that says, oh, we don't do that in our family. Well, I think I'll move to another country then. Maybe that will give me some chances here. So this, once again, is an indication that this story is the way of the feminine. And the colors of alchemy are red, black, and white, which are the 3 stages of alchemy. So the stepmother story provides a possible answer to how to approach this. You see, when one has what they call a mother complex, They're rejecting the mother. And this isn't necessarily our personal or our birth mothers. It is the principle of mothering, although certainly our birth mothers can upset us. Okay? But without this tension, without the negative mother, within or without, or the negative feminine experience within or without, there's going to be no movement in the unconscious. Haven't you noticed? The second you said, oh, I want to be conscious, or I want to be spiritual, or I want to be whole, a river of shit entered your life, because that's where the gold is. And people will always say, I don't know what happened. It's like, well, you asked to be conscious, right? It was like, well, here it is. This is what it looks like in the first stages. It's not sweetness and light. It's not goodness for goodness sake. It's hard work, the way of the soul, but it's worth everything, because it's really one of the main tasks that we're here for. So, Tales of the Evil Mother describes an acute conflict between the figures of the mother and the daughter, which often goes so far as the mother tries to take the daughter's life. Well, in this case, it's the stepmother. Not all fairy tales clearly state that the stepmother is so evil, but in Snow White, it is jealousy. And jealousy is the reverse of love. I think it's jealousy, but I also feel very strongly that it's envy. Envy hates the good. So, but it's what makes love bitter and sets bounds to its extent. Love needs this kind of negative force as a reminder of its kind of negation, right? But when it is presented in such an evil form as the stepmother, it must be a question of finding a new value capable of prevailing against jealousies or something negative. So often, when we want to achieve a higher consciousness or more conscious in the form of eros. Now, eros is not just the erotic, although it can be in that form. Eros is the living principle of love. It's the substance of love. It's Aphrodite's son in some cases, all right? And in other stories, Eros is older than Aphrodite or Venus. So these are forces. This is this energy that brings things together, that longs for union and separation. Which, of course, we learn, in falling in love. Like, we fall in love and that energy comes in, and then it's gone. So here we have it. But when we can't connect to the eros, we wind up getting stabbed in the back by the dark mother within ourselves. And the tendency to remain unconscious and avoid pain is associated with a gain in consciousness. The stepmother who tries to eradicate the first signs of life in the heroine is usually projected out onto the real mother or other women. It takes further development for her to see that the persecuting woman she cannot escape is within herself. So it's the witch within. So then we realize that we are living at odds with ourselves. And that's what begins to happen. So Snow White, although she just meets the mother, and then, which we'll find out next week, at the age of 7, well, that mirror just can't keep its mouth shut because it's got to tell the truth. And that mirror is like seals little Snow White's fate. Because the challenges are now coming in. The new is going to be more beautiful than the old. So the evil stepmother, one characteristic of the evil stepmother is often that she can't be escaped. She hunts the heroine down to her death. The symbolic death is the condition of rebirth, in psychological terms, of coming to consciousness, so that it is possible to say that the dark stepmother very often launches the individuation process. So if you can't, if you need to project your dark mother out onto somebody, at least recognize you are refusing to grow because it's their fault. We project it out in the world. And I'm not saying that people don't harm one another, but the projection and the intensity, because when a woman is in the grips of the mother complex, the other woman is pure evil and therefore unforgivable. But the one who's projecting is really the cold mother who can't understand another person's humanity. But, darlings, there's next week. Yay, we're coming into some serious consciousness here. So this is what's going to happen. So just check and see, before you project out or when you get a little rant going on in your head, see who's advising you. Is it that dark mother with that mirror? Is it the dead mother who's abandoned you? Is it your inner Snow White? Who's advising you? Because there's many, many voices, and that's the journey of individuation that we begin to recognize. Okay, au revoir.